There were a lot of expectations from Lima in one sense, but there were also limited expectations. Both went together, and that depended on parties. So one group of parties had very high expectations from Lima, as they thought Lima to be the platform from where they will, start a process to reach an ambitious deal in Paris. Whereas the other group of parties had a very limited expectations from Lima. They only wanted Lima to come out with informational package on intended national contributions that countries had agreed to submit before Paris. So one of the problems in Lima was the expectation mismatch between parties, and that led to a lot of problems. Some of the problems also were related to poor management and non-inclusiveness and non-transparency, which developing countries felt very strongly about. They felt that the process was not managed very well, that the process was non-transparent as well as non-inclusive. So that also led to many problems in Lima. But on substantive issue, I think there are a few things that is very important that came out of Lima. I think the implications of Lima is going to be felt not only in Paris, but also beyond Paris. So the Lima text reads that parties would come out with an ambitious deal in Paris based on the CBDR, which will also depend on national circumstances. Now, this in many ways redefines CBDR. CBDR has always been about the responsibilities of parties for causing climate change, as well as capability of parties for solving climate change. So it has been about responsibility and capability. Now, for the first time, national circumstances has been included in CBDR. So in future, parties are, whenever there is a talk of responsibility and capability, national circumstances will also be included. Now, this is hugely problematic. It is problematic firstly because it now removes in many ways differentiation between developed and developing countries, because national circumstances was largely an issue which developing countries used or were valid for developing countries, because their national circumstances was that there was a lot of poverty, they had developmental deficit, they needed to grow. These were the national circumstances which were the priorities for developing countries. Now developed countries will also talk about their national circumstances. Europe can talk about recession, or the US can talk about the inability of its political system to get a ambitious climate legislation domestically. At Lima, there was an opportunity for developing countries to have a hook of equity on INDCs, and therefore the review of INDCs, the kind of information that parties should have submitted for INDCs, could have been converted into an opportunity to link INDC with CBDR and equity, and which I felt that developing countries, and most prominently like-minded developing countries, failed to grasp this opportunity. Because just before Lima, US-China deal agreement was signed, and which is obviously a very, very unambitious agreement. US is not going to reduce much, and China is going to only peak by 2030, which means that both US, China and Europe are going to appropriate more than 50% of the carbon space from now till 2050, or even more, leaving very little for the rest of the world. And therefore, INDCs could have been used as an opportunity to start talking about appropriation of carbon space. which I felt that developing countries, including India, missed. I think India was quite aggressive on the issue of ex-ante review of INDC, which I thought was very important. That was an opportunity to actually ask tough questions from developed countries. It was an opportunity to ask them why their ambition of emission reduction is so low. We could have talked about their technology transfer and finance. But I believe that developing countries went in a very defensive frame of mind to Lima, because they thought that more than developed countries, their INDCs would be reviewed. Whereas the situation was to the contrary. The review of INDCs would have been much more tougher on developed countries than on developing countries. So I don't expect countries to be ambitious and be transparent about INDCs. So transparency is going to be a major issue for INDCs from now till Paris. I also believe that with the differentiation, CBDR being diluted, it is not going to be very easy for developing countries to wriggle out of this differentiation issue, because by the time they will reach Paris, it will be developing countries who will be under pressure and not the developed countries. Road to Paris is going to be full of conflicts, and that was quite clear in Lima as well, that it took 33 extra hours for the negotiators to arrive at a simple text where there was no new commitments. It was just how the world is going to move from Lima to Paris, and that took so much time. So Paris is going to be much more difficult. I also believe that we should not have very high hopes from Paris. Lima text, is such that the ambition level in Paris is going to be quite low. So tough road ahead, and a tough road for developing countries. They will have to actually work very hard to recover lost ground, because the way CBDR has been diluted, it's going to be very difficult for the developing countries in the future.